Hey, welcome to the Lighthouse of Awesome. I am Michael. Today I want to talk about clean data. So, clean data has a lot of upsides and downsides. Used to work for a very small company. The data that I worked with always had to be clean. We were always working in Excel. We always needed to use pivot tables. So the data always had to be really clean. All the cells had to have a little bit of information, even if it was not applicable. And it became a really great system. I was able to automate the system in a lot of ways. I was able to find ways to even clean the data more than it was already clean. I was able to bring in new sets of data that, even though it wasn't clean, could be clean to match up with the data. Had a lot of different advantages. And a lot of times the data I work with isn't clean, right? You can't sort it. Filtering is rough. Cells are merged together. Things get combined and moved around. And so today I want to really talk about the advantages of clean data and the disadvantages of clean data. Personally, I come down pretty hard on the advantages side of clean data. Like, I'd always rather have clean data than not have clean data. I'd rather spend more time cleaning the data than necessarily working with the data, because I find that to be faster and more efficient in the long term. But not cleaning the data has a lot of advantages, and I think this is something that's not discussed in a lot of courses on data manipulation and analysis, that there's really a lot of good reasons that people do not clean up the data. And it's hard. We don't know how. It's more work than I want to do. And so this is kind of issue number one with cleaning the data. So you get a set of data and it's not clean to your liking for whatever reason. So you join a group and they're already working with data that's not clean, or data is handed to you and we just need to get this done out the door, and that's the priority. That's what I'm getting measured on. I'm measured on my ability to do this task and not the beauty or the quality of what I do. And I think this is a real big challenge for convincing people to clean data, because it takes time. When you're just working on a minute portion of a project, cleaning the data is a problem, right? It's going to take 5 days to clean the data to do this little tweak. Like, it doesn't make sense. You're never going to do it. You also have the challenge of, you're changing the data structure if you're cleaning the data. So if you're getting a datum in every cell, there is information that's being conveyed that comes from having more than one datum in a single cell. There may have been some changes to a particular element for whatever reason, and it's just easier to say, strike through this old thing and make a quick edit. Somebody that's looking at it can say, all right, it's no longer this, it's this, creating an extra column to say, is this current or is it not current? And then creating a new row that can be, it can cause confusion because you have 5 different attributes that you have to figure out, what is what. And if you're not familiar with a particular data set, maybe you don't know there's a active and inactive toggle on the columns. And we don't want to be having arguments of how are we interpreting the data halfway through the project, especially if it's a large project. So a lot of times, just to keep something going, keep things flowing, get things done in a period of time, you're not going to ask questions. You're not going to go through cleaning the data. You're not going to go through having merged cells and non-clean data and things that are kind of sloppy. Keeps the data in order, right? If you know in your head where something is on a list, it's always going to be there if you can't sort the list. And your keys are always going to be right, even if though the key refers to 5 different things. That's because you're always going to know where you are, and things can just be merged together. And with these, and it says this is a single idea, and that's really powerful to really connect things together in that sort of way. Are there ways you can do that with clean data? Absolutely. Do they take more time? Sure do. Time is always going to be the real battle when you come to cleaning data, is that does it make sense for me to clean data to do this thing? Another big problem, big advantage of not cleaning data is it preserves the people who are working with the data. Creates more overall work, so you're required to work with the document. It creates institutionalized knowledge, so people that either know what the system is at the institution, or they know how to find the data at the institution, and it's not a natural lookup process for people that are new to a project or new to a situation, and it kind of maintains that power structure within an organization. It protects jobs. It does things that really make people feel secure, right? It's just, I've done this way. I've always done this way, and you should learn the way that I've done it. And I think that makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And I don't think that's a cynical view of it. I think it's a more realistic. If I can get it done in 3 seconds, like, why would I change what I'm doing, regardless of who else is looking at it? Now, in the advantages of clean data, we can sort, we can filter, we can compare and contrast, we can search the data, right? If you're searching for something and you find something that's crossed out, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is a mess, because you're just like, is this the data? Is this not the data? What happens here? Can I delete this? Can I not delete this? Why is this in this circumstance? And kind of what's happening through this process. And so as we start to clean data, we start to be able to sort. We can put it in any order. Like, we've got a key, so we can always put it in the original order, but we can also sort out a column alphabetically and say, what do these columns have in common? These 5 rows have something in common. We know they're all together because they're a bunch of merged cells between the two, but it's even more helpful to be able to break up those 5 merged cells and say, like, all right, or rows, and say, how do these rows compare to other places in the document? How do we know that this isn't a duplication of something else? And how do we start to see those correlations between different aspects of information? And so as we continue to clean the data and be able to manipulate the data, that becomes a great advantage. We can find errors more easily. We can start to create new associations, new ideas. We can onboard people more easily because they can sort the data however they want to learn it. Instead of having to go through 300 different rows and not being able to see how row 300 compares to row 1 because there's all sorts of merged cells and crazy things in between. In non-clean data, it's really hard to find errors. And so this goes back to preserving your position, right? You're not going to get tagged for an error if nobody finds the error, right? So by the time it gets through the process, even though it's more expensive for the company to fix the error, it's less expensive for the individual person who made the error, because it's like, oh, that was an oversight and that sort of thing. If we're in an environment that ratchets up accountability and says, like, oh, look at how fewer errors I have this week versus last week, we're really looking at minimizing cost, not minimizing errors when we're using clean data. Right? We want to be able to find those errors. We want to be able to identify them. We want to be able to sort and say, like, oh, we've got 5 of this different thing. Maybe this should be cleaned up a little bit. How we think of this process can be a little different. So as we clean the data, we start to see that we can get through things faster, right? We don't have to go attribute by attribute, especially if we're going through a lineage or something like that. We can just dump stuff, and as we dump stuff, as we clean stuff, as we arrange stuff, we can say, like, all right, I understand these attributes, I don't understand these other attributes, and things like that. Cleaning data is just super valuable, and I definitely encourage everybody to do